Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we will watch the film shot by our team about the work of Associate Professor Ivo Lozenki and Ms. Slava Sevryukova, who unfortunately is no longer with us. We will examine the question of clairvoyance together with Mr. Stoicho Stoev, whom I invited to the studio to share his opinions and theoretical positions on this issue in modern science. Among the many psychics in Bulgaria, one remarkable phenomenon is Slava Sevryukova. Slava Sevryukova, or Aunt Slava, is now 87 years old. She began to show her abilities at the age of 5, but her abilities were taken more seriously starting in the early 1960s when she met and connected with Associate Professor Ivo Lozenki. The special thing about her is that she directs her abilities not in the field of treatment, not in the field, let's say telepathy, or other fields, but in the scientific field. Slava Sevryukova herself has an elementary education. She graduated from the 4th grade or 4th department in the past and only went to the 5th grade for an indefinite amount of time, but was guided by Associate Professor Ivo Lozenki. She can penetrate different structures, as she herself expresses it. I can penetrate the Earth's core. I can penetrate a volcano's throat. They can be transported to the North Pole. I can penetrate the organism of an individual person or the structure of an atom. This is exactly how Ivo Lozenki is directed to make different scientific discoveries. She has no idea what a micron is, let's say, but he points out, here look, this is a millimeter. Come on now. Try to divide the millimeter into 1,000 parts. Can you? I can, she says. Now look at an electron, let's say, or an atom. Imagine how many times this particle is applied. Here, 1,000th of a millimeter, and show what the magnitude is. In this way, pointing it, he uses simply as an apparatus to straighten one or other discoveries. Slava Sevryukova has the opportunity to travel to the laboratory birus of one and another scientist to see his notes, to see his experiments, but she says it for moral reasons. I would never publish what I saw, which is secret and which belongs as copyright to this scientist. And Lozenki, for example, uses these opportunities of Slava Sevryukova to penetrate and outline for him how he sees the nucleus of the atom. We all know that the model, which is common in all textbooks and is used by science, the atom's nucleus, it has a spherical round shape. Slava Sevryukova, however, points out that the atom, its model, is not exactly a sphere, but is elongated or bisu visible, and points out that the nucleus itself is not like a ball, a sphere, but like a ring. From here she points out how the atoms are arranged to say in one or other substance, not only them, how she depicts them, which this is set out in his scientific works and Vodensky's, but these fixed data of theirs are then compared with data published later in American scientific journals from photographs taken with the largest microscopes available today, which show that we have a complete coincidence between what Slava Sevryukova saw in the structure of substances and what he showed. The microscope and the images taken with the microscope. In this way, Ivo Lozenki and Slava Sevryukova have registered several scientific discoveries with a team and with other collaborators from the Mining and Geological Institute in Sofia, which have been patented in Bulgaria. What is Slava Sevryukova's understanding of the role of these abilities? And how is this information and these contacts realized according to her thought and with very strong energy. Our thought is purely a spiritual thing. It is both material. Slava Sevryukova even points out the color of thought. She says it has a gray color. It possesses enormous energy and travels at a speed several times greater than that of light. It can trigger various changes. That's why Lozenki and Slava Sevryukova talk about psi substance. And the case of Slava Sevryukova shows that psychic abilities can be used not only for medical purposes or other practical goals, such as in the field of geology or searching for water, but also for very specific scientific research. If many psychics focus their abilities here, they can also help science make purely scientific discoveries. This is also a national treasure.
And what about the camp? I quote Artalan. I take the core out. I cut it. And that orbit.
Well, as a system, we have received too many invitations to participate in congresses, symposiums, international conferences, and so on.
We have sections and organization of... We went to Warsaw on our own expenses because it was closer to our country, which made it expensive, and we had to deal with the mayor. It's a mix of very nice. We have a mine. Let's catch it. We had great success.
Hi. Already 200 invitations, which Aunt Slava received back in the 80s, for participation in an international congress on acupuncture in Palma de Mallorca, Spain, which congress was held under the patronage of the Spanish. We were invited as collaborators in the American journal Sirisec, published in San Francisco. I know that they can't be sent, as they told me, in 10 languages, 5 Western and 5 Eastern, with one of our works printed there. And for men in the cosmos. And there they were eagerly awaiting our research works in this field.
But secret patriots want to stay in our country?
And that's why we want immigration to come to Bulgaria first and then go abroad, even though they are offering us to go back. I know Mrs. Sedalka since 1962, somewhere referred to later as Left Glory. And since 1963, we are working with her, so to speak, in the field of psychotronics, purposefully and systematically. It turned out that it can penetrate all areas of human knowledge. We started in 1981. You could say it's systematic research in the field of the microworld. Many people came to us, researchers, and they simply pushed us towards this work, saying, Veleva, put everything in, take a peek into the machine. Do you know how interesting this is for the scientific world? And we decided to give it a try. I personally was sure that she would penetrate the atom, since we already have a lot of experience in this field, and I know the strength of her vision. We started, with light hydrogen. First, I saw them as gas and agreement. We checked some of its properties to be sure that this is indeed hydrogen and not some other. And then I tell her like this. According to scientists, this gas consists of Very small particles called atoms. I see them, look, how it stands in front of me. It looks like a grain of wheat. When you zoom in, it turns out that it has the shape of a perfect ellipsoid. Here it is shown above. All these four were made in her name. She herself draws them, and then I build them, but the weights are not as commonly accepted. It turned out that this one is clearly spinning at an enormous speed. Now, according to our calculations, it turns out that it spins, making almost 10 to the power of 18 revolutions per second. And then I said to myself, Leviathan, the friend with the power of thought and heights 3. What is in it? She stopped it, and it turned out that there is a nucleus inside, which are orbiting around 2 light particles. We have checked almost all the elements using this method. And I say, starting from light hydrogen all the way to the heavy ones, it turned out that all the elements have the same pattern, a heavy core around which 2 light particles orbit. We called them orbitonic laser orbitons. Then Aunt Slava extracted the core with the power of thought. It turned out that it has the shape of a ring. She cut it again with the power of thought. And then inside, we found that it is made up of the science, which I already mentioned. The core is made up entirely of strong, and the orbital quasi-orbital turned out to be made up of these particles as well. So step by step, wheat, blue. Well, that might be a bit of an exaggeration. I suppose that's true. The geometry of the atom, that is, we calculated its axis thanks to the phenomenal abilities of Aunt Slava. For example, she takes the brand of the main axis. We have mass of the length of the major axis. And she says, for example, about light hydrogen. 3 leaves a small part, 1 small part. Then she explained that this ratio for light impact, for example, of 2 bodies is 3, and 3.4, 3.34, that is 370 and 5. It turns out that this ratio, for example, for atoms is almost the same, but it varies within small limits from 3.15 for light ones to 360 and 6 for bismuth. In the end, it was very interesting to see how these atoms are arranged in a solid body. That is, this crystal lattice that physicists and crystallographers have been talking about for a long time. And what it looks like, Aunt Slava managed to see that. And I still remember what example she gave so that it would be easier for me to understand the arrangement of the atoms, she said. And I looked at barrels, such barrels lined up next to each other, in rows for them still. And it turned out that the authors from the established lattice are arranged in the same way. And here we have part of his thesis being shown.
And when I put them, the prices throw me off.
The last one was thrown very lightly.
Part 1 hair.
I say, there, and we might host it at 60 and the 4th, which enjoy the microns, and the number of non-cultured atoms turned out to be 900, and from there we immediately calculated the size of the hydrogen atom. And from there the size of every other one, since we established a simple dependency between the atomic mass of each chemical element. Its geometric dimensions later matched very well with the sizes of silicon atoms, which are shown in a microphotograph. A scientist used the super powerful scanning microscope. So far we have 9 publications in various journals, Gila, but also foreign countries, touching on issues related to psychotronics, as well as questions related to certain scientific research, developing negotiations, and so on. In addition, we have 3 inventions that are the incredibly dedicated and experienced author team, these skilled and talented fishermen, which have been developed and have received copyright certificates intended for the express determination of carbonate content in rock samples. Now we are preparing a monograph for publication that summarizes all our experience and observations in the field of the microworld.
At first, I felt like I was somehow better than the other kids. In another way. Yes, my family is of average height. I am from Nova Zagra, and the war for the children's world, it was maybe that. I have to say that for exactly 1 year, we have been living against the military grains. Yeah, but I don't have any color anywhere. Yes, and my mom. I said, let's go out and bring in some firewood from the wood pile and hollow water. Of course, we went out with her. Temporary hours, the Stara, Zagora, everything, since we live in the end. Is also a soldier's show, of course, and a little bit of oil. Yes, they call you for the livestock. The cattle are hard to move. And then my mother said, and now it's raining where the soldier's shelter is. In the barracks, it's cold. Finn turns to me, says there, I haven't received a letter from your father. It's already been 3 months since the date of the letter. Your older brother is at the front, and we have letters from him. We know he is alive since we received the letter. Your other brother is in Petrovac, and he is with some of us there. Yes, but Dad hasn't sent a letter during this time, and I find myself at Dad's in a right brush, which they called a settlement. But I'm in the kitchen and watching at the top of the poverty. There is a remedy. I heal. On such a little shelf, I see a few cups and pennies. I'm looking at the postcard for the auction. This is at the moment. Yes. And immediately I say to my mom, Mom, we have a letter. And she looked at me like that and said, who told you? I said, is it just Oleg? Well, who told you? I said, one of the kids, the boy, told me. 5. Yes. Mom didn't tell me anything. Mom was already taking the bucket. I brought it back. We are small, lying down, and my mom started to spin as she opened the door above the stove to let in the morning light. I watch my mom, and it's good that she goes out and tells me, I'm going there. I know she's going to the green fields, and when she enters the yard, I'm calling you. Maria, you know we have a letter from the initial meeting. I'm worried because there won't be a letter for you. He doesn't have a letter. My mom says, I'm coming for the letter. How does the letter come? I got it from India. And there was no one to come and say, today, I think I'll tell my mom. She said, Petko. She told Tanasa that there is a letter but she said, "It's been a week with Madsen." "Marika, I don't know what, but give me the letter." He gave me one. I barely saw it, and it's not just to hear. I hear it here. So in Malta, and then it was already loaded, and at school, when the teacher is teaching. Then he nodded at me. The classes. In the first course and a little over the first term, it got chaotic. The kids let me go. The next year, my mom didn't recognize me anymore, but I had only gone up to the 3rd grade of high school, one man. Look, at the new car. And from then until today, the talent doesn't go away. He holds me. The last folk I saw, I never thought, and I have never thought, that I could see particles, atoms, and secrets. Because there is no education for me to be guided. But they came. People who were interested in this encouraged me. And you won't start with me. With Associate Professor Lozenki. Since we have been working together since '63, I started first. Let's see, the nucleus of the atom. And imagine being dedicated. With the power of thought. Steps one after another, we started first. I started with light hydrogen. Since I had no idea what it meant to fly light hydrogen, but since Lozenki said so, I will call it that. Evo. Since my years indeed allow me to call it that. He just smiled, but he didn't ask the question as much as he was careful that I fell in love with physics. Since I don't have that education, thanks to the power of the depth, vision that I see, I managed to master it. All those earlier ones, this one swallows quarks. Later, they renamed them to science in honor of Psychotronics. They are indivisible. But with the power of thought, I have a certain sign. I heard it. I look at it. I extract the common mass of it, and I increase it as much as I want, so that I can see clearly, thinking that the bigger it is, the clearer it will be. But in the end, I realized that it wasn't like that, but I did it at the beginning. The mass, in terms of transaction, is the healer, and it doesn't increase to the extent that I see it as a peeled millet.